Hello, it's Sue Anstis here, and just before you listen to this episode of The Game Changers, I wanted to quickly tell you that my new documentary, Game On, The Unstoppable Rise of Women's Sport, is now available to watch on Netflix in the UK. It's a powerful film that explores the recent growth in women's sport and its impact across society. It will open your eyes to the challenges faced by female athletes and bring hope for a future where women and girls have equal access and opportunity in sport. I really hope you enjoy it. Now it's time for the Game Changers. Hello and welcome to the Game Changers. I'm Sue Anstis, and this is the podcast where you'll hear from trailblazing women in sport who are knocking down barriers and challenging the status quo for women and girls everywhere. What can we learn from their journeys as we explore some of the key issues around equality in sport and beyond? I'd like to start with a big thank you to our partners Sport England, who support the Game Changers podcast through a National Lottery Award. My guest today is Eilish McColgan, an incredible distance athlete who holds the European record for 10,000 metres on the road, as well as British records at the 5 and 10,000 metres on the track and road, and in the half marathon. Eilish has won many European medals on the track, indoors and outdoors, and has represented Team GB at 3 Olympics in London, Rio and Tokyo. It's been an extraordinary year for Eilish. Last summer, she became Commonwealth Games Champion over 10,000 metres, a feat that repeated her mum's victory 36 years earlier and broke the Commonwealth Games record. A few days later, she was back to take silver over 5,000 metres. And then in 2023, Eilish broke her own half marathon record and became the first British woman to win the Berlin half marathon. She also eclipsed Paula Radcliffe's UK record, running 10,000 metres in 30 minutes. In 2022, Eilish launched a non-profit organisation, Giving Back to Track, with her partner and fellow Olympian, Michael Rimmer, with an ambition to encourage young people to get involved in athletics and to fund the next generation of female athletes. Eilish, if I can, I'd like to start with where you are now. I know you've had a few injuries lately, but things seem to be looking good based on some of the videos you've been sharing recently on Instagram. So how are you now, and what are the plans moving ahead?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a frustrating couple of weeks and even months, to be honest. This whole year has just been a bit of a roller coaster of being on a fine edge of high performance and running so many sort of two really big personal bests, but at the same time then just being on the edge of the flip side of that of injury. So yeah, it's been a lot to take in over the last couple of weeks. I'm slowly getting back running now, having to sort of delay the very start of my track season. Obviously big changes from not doing London Marathon, so we're completely just reassessing our plans really for the year and what we want our goals to be. But that is sport, as you know. It's not just me, it's part and parcel of every elite athlete's life.
And how do you cope with that? Because it is almost like running at the edge of the very maximum of what your body can do. How have you learnt to cope with that in terms of mentally dealing with those challenges?
Actually, over the last couple of years, I felt very in control of my training. I've been very on top of it. And yes, I pick up little niggles here and there. That's pretty normal. But I've actually managed to avoid the sort of bigger things. I've not really had to take any enforced rest at all. And I think that was because we'd found like a really good sweet spot of training for me. But obviously looking towards the marathon, I know that I need to do the bigger volumes. I know I need to extend all my sort of sessions and long runs to ensure that my body's ready for that marathon distance. And so, yeah, perhaps we've try to maybe do it a little bit too quickly this year. There was so much pressure obviously coming into having pulled out of the last London Marathon in October to then feel like, Joe, I need to be in the start line in April. I think it's more that, to be honest. I think it's perhaps the change in training that's led to these injuries. So as I said, I think the last couple of years I've become very comfortable and in a little bit of a comfort zone. And this year has been a real big challenge to push outside of that. And ultimately, yeah, we're sort of finding out, okay, this is maybe a bit too far, or maybe we need to back off here, or maybe we need to change things within training. So as much as mentally it's been difficult to not be running and to go through phases of injury, I've actually learned an awful lot from it, and I think I will be much stronger from this as well. As I said, knowing sort of what mistakes to avoid and what we can learn from for certainly next year and hopefully then even towards the Worlds in 2025 that are back in Tokyo.
And what a couple of years you've had. So even in the last few months, smashing Paula Radcliffe's 21-year-old British 10K record and then taking 43 seconds off of your own British record at the Berlin Half on April 2nd. How does it feel to you to be breaking records in that way?
Yeah, it was nice to feel like all the training's been worth it. I think, again, like moving towards the longer distances, it was a big change in training. You sort of wonder, am I going to respond well to this, or am I more suited to the training we were doing beforehand? But I think it was a really good indicator, both of those races, for me that, okay, we found some sessions here that really, really work for me. I'm definitely more of a strength athlete. That's definitely something that's my sort of a good asset for me to have. So yeah, it was nice to feel like all of that had come together in a race and just to feel good doing it as well. It's very rare that you go into a competition and you feel really strong and you feel ready to compete. And I think what I take confidence the most out of that is that things weren't perfect either heading into both of those races. Again, I had a few injuries and a few niggles leading into them. So almost in the back of my mind, I'm very conscious of, right, if we can do that, knowing that you're still carrying a few things, a few issues, what can we do when we're fully 100% and really ready to go? So I think I would have been far more disappointed had I not got those two events in and I'd missed London and I was now left thinking, wow, what a waste of training essentially. Do you know, I've put in all that work and I don't really have anything to show for it. But I think mentally it's been really good. Those two races have really helped me in the sense that, yes, I'm injured right now. It's a bit annoying. It's a bit frustrating, but I can see what I've done. So I think that gives me a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel to know, right, let's get back again. Let's get back healthy. Let's get back fit, because I know what my body can do this summer and into the autumn as well.
Very exciting. And can I take you back to life growing up? So I'm really interested to know what you remember of your mum's career. Obviously, I'm old enough to have remembered your mum's career watching as a fan. But what do you remember growing up? How did it shape your ambitions?
Yeah, it's going to sound really bad because I just didn't really have any awareness of like how good I suppose my mum was as an athlete. Like when it's your mum, I remember like some kid at school saying, oh yeah, your mum's a world champion. And you're like, yeah, like when you're like 12, what does that really mean? You have no concept of what that takes. You have no concept of the level of training, level of competition. Like you just can't grasp it. So for me, I just always knew that my parents would go out for runs. They'd keep fit, they'd keep active, but I'd had no real awareness of the level, that she competed at. It wasn't really until probably about high school where I started to compete myself, at Scottish schools and Scottish championships, and to then think, wow, like my mum was not only a British champion, not only a European champion, she was the world champion at one point. And that's when I really started to have probably a far greater appreciation of her achievements. But yeah, very early memories are I just remember them running, my parents just running. To me, I just thought everyone's parents went out and kept fit and kept active. I don't remember ever seeing her at a track. I don't remember ever seeing her at a race. I just remember sort of playing football with my dad or going cycling with my dad whilst my mum would be doing her session. But I didn't, do you know what I mean? I just didn't have that awareness of it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And what other sports did you play ahead of finding athletics?
Honestly, I tried everything. I obviously had so much energy. So my parents put me just into everything going. I was at swimming. I was at tennis. I used to go to badminton at the local leisure centre. I even played golf for a little bit because we live in like a golf town. Netball, hockey, like literally everything. It really was just athletics was the one that I loved the most. And not even running, to be honest. I did the long jump. I mean, my first ever medal was in the javelin at Scottish schools, and high jump probably till I was about 15, 16. So running definitely was the one I loved the most out of it. But athletics as a sport was something that I just really felt like I just fit in a little bit more. I felt like I really enjoyed the club atmosphere we had. The kids that were at the club, they became like my second family. I remember swimming up until maybe the point where the swim teacher told me I had to start getting up at like 5 a.m. in the morning or something for swim training before school. And I was like, Mum, Dad, this is not for me. I'm out here. Athletics was always in the evening, so that certainly suited me a lot more.
Was heptathlon ever on the cards at all?
I did, yeah. I did we obviously at that age, when you're like 12, 13, you have pentathlon. I think I maybe would have won a medal at like indoor Scottish pentathlon when I was young. It was some of the events that suited me, and then when they started, obviously the heptathlon, it's just, I never got the chance to do that, because by that point I decided running was what I wanted to focus on. But yeah, I did everything, sprint hurdles, 200 metres, like I loved it all.
And you obviously had the most amazing physique, but how was it for you growing up, being so tall and so slender in school? I know how hard it can be for teenage girls, you know, whatever traits you have, but how was that for you at school? I'd say I was super unconfident at school. Probably down to, the way I looked. I just felt like I never looked like many of the other girls. I was obviously very tall, very lean. I didn't have the boobs, the bum that everyone else had and everyone else was developing. And so when I went to the running club, it was like there was other kids that looked like me, essentially. So maybe that's why I felt like I fit in more with them. Like every weekend I would be doing stuff with my running friends. Do you know what I mean? I had like a separate group outside of school. And while sort of people were sort of partying and stuff at high school, I was always going with them, whether it was to the cinema or going to a barbecue or going to a sleepover, whatever it was. I just felt like a greater connection to the people in my running club. And maybe that was just purely because, maybe not even that we all looked similar, but just the sense that we had this passion that we really wanted to not even that, we just enjoyed running. Do you know what I mean? There was a sort of social element to it. But yeah, certainly in the school, I just always felt I would never quite look like the other girls. Or maybe I certainly didn't feel like I would be attractive to like the other girls would be, just because of the shape I was. And it's a shame, obviously, when I look back now, like that's me. Like it was never going to change whether I was 12 or whether I'm 32. Like my body shape is always going to be this way. Even if I stopped running tomorrow, I'm still never ever going to look like, I don't know, Kim Kardashian or something. Do you know, that's just not my body shape. So that's something I'm pretty, I suppose, passionate about now, in the sense that being openly confident about the way I look, and so that the sort of young women that are coming through in the sport, maybe they do see me as a little bit of a role model. Do you know what I mean? They have someone, they say, right, this is her natural body shape. She feels it correctly. She's looking after herself. That's the most important thing. But at the end of the day, that's just the way she looks. That's her natural shape. There's not much you can do about it. So yeah, I've certainly come a long way from confidence levels from school. And you found your way into steeplechase, which is really interesting, because it's not the first track event that springs to mind when you think of females, even distance running. So how did you find that?
I think that's why I liked it. Just the fact that it was, the steeplechase was very new to female sport. I can't remember what year it was. It might have been 2009. I'd have to check that online. That was the first women's steeplechase that was brought in. I think it was maybe at World Championships. And I watched it, and I just remember my dad was a steeplechaser, so I always felt like it was an event that my mum had never tried, never been able to try. And so for me, maybe it was just I don't know if at the time, perhaps, maybe I did shy away from the fact that, my mum was this Olympic medalist and world champion. Maybe subconsciously, I didn't feel like that. But now when I look back, maybe that's why I was so drawn to the steeplechase as an event. And it just naturally happened, in all honesty. Like, I knew my dad did it. I remember we went to like this junior league event. We'd like travelled on the bus all the way down to, I think it was down in Newcastle or something. My club was too small, so we had to like congregate the clubs in Scotland, and it was brilliant. We called ourselves Kingdom Athletics. And we travelled down in this minibus, and I remember they were trying to get, obviously, points so that we would stay in the league. And you used to do you do an 800, you do a 1500, you do the high jump, the shot put, and a relay at the end. Like, you did it all in one day. And they started introducing 1500 metre steeplechase for women, and nobody wanted to do it. Like, it was the event, just nobody was willing to put themselves forward. Nobody wanted to get their feet wet and be embarrassed by like the water jump, because everyone would sit around the water jump and watch everybody fall over and make a fool of themselves. So I remember they were begging me to do it. And they said, look, even if you just finish, you get a point. So I was like, okay, I'll go and do it. And obviously I did 1500 anyway. So I thought, well, I can just, and I did sprint hurdles as a kid. I thought I'll just combine the two. And yeah, I won the race. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, like it gave me a bit of confidence, because although I was good at 815s, I was never winning things. I was never like breaking records or winning loads of medals. I was always there or thereabout. So for me, it was like the first little breakthrough I had. I think I maybe ran one of the fastest times in Scotland, but it's because obviously it was an event that wasn't really, it only just begun. But again, it just gave me confidence. And so I did the 1500 steeple, then I went to 2K, and then I remember taking on my first ever 3K. And even that was the first time I sort of had a sort of sniff of being around making like maybe a Europeans one day, or making a, before then I'd never ever been at that level or ever thought I would get to the level to represent my country or represent GB at something. But the steeplechase really was that open door for me, because the standards were a little bit lower. There was less women competing in it. So yeah, it was really my gateway into my first ever GB vest was in the 3000 metre steeplechase in 2011. And it just gave me a huge insight into what I wanted to do then. As soon as I did that event, I remember thinking, I'm going to go to the Olympics next year. And it's mad because a year ago or 6 months before that, I would never, ever have even dreamt of going to the Olympic Games. Like it just was way outside my capabilities. But the steeplechase sort of gave me that little first dangle of the carrot.
That's really interesting. I hadn't realised that. And I guess within the steeplechase, you did have some horrible injury. Can you tell us a little bit about that and when that occurred within your kind of journey into the sport?
Yeah, so it happened very soon after. And I think, to be honest, looking back now, although it was so tough at the time, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, in the sense that I was so determined to come back from that. And I suppose in 2011 was my first, as I said, my first GB team, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was way above the level I'd been competing at over 1500s and 3Ks and even the 5K. Like I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't fast enough. And yet here I was with my GB vest. I was so excited. But at the same time then it all happened very quickly, and I got probably a little bit too excited. I started getting invited to the Diamond League events. And like when you're a 21-year-old girl who's never ever been at that level before, I just took every opportunity I could. I was like, oh, I can't believe it. Like I'm going down to London for the Diamond League. I'm racing in Belgium. I'm doing this and this and this. But I sort of forgot that for the last 3 years before that, I'd been living as a student, eating kebabs at 3 a.m. in the morning and partying and drinking all the time. I'd sort of just overnight gone, bang, I'm going to change my entire life. And so my body wasn't quite being, I was like pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, but not quite respecting it the way it should have been. I certainly wasn't living like a professional athlete at that point. Although I was trying, I was sort of playing at it, I certainly wasn't doing everything with regards to being professional. And so it all just came tumbling down. I made obviously that Diamond League in 2011, and about 600 metres into the race, the second last water jump, I just heard my foot pop. And I've never ever broke a bone in my life, but I knew straight away it was broken. But it was my last chance to qualify for the World Championship, my last chance to get on to UK Athletics funding as well. So I was really, really sort of motivated to do that. I ran I hobbled and cried the last 600 metres. I crossed the line, finished the race. I was like crying my eyes out, because although I'd hit I'd hit a PB, I'd hit a qualifying time for the World Champs, like I'd done everything I set out to do, but I knew that was it. Like I'd completely broken my foot. I remember the paramedics telling me, oh no, don't worry, like just take some paracetamol, it'll be a sprain, it'll be some sort of like you've twisted your ankle or something. And I was like, I just knew, deep down I knew that it was something more serious. So yeah, we went straight back up to Scotland that night in a little wheelchair. Jake Whiteman's dad, actually, Jeff Whiteman, who was a stadium announcer, he was wheeling me around the airport to take me back up to Scotland. And then that was it. Yeah, I had to undergo surgery for 5 screws and a metal plate in my left foot. And the surgeon at the time didn't tell me, but it was a prototype plate that they'd never ever used before. He didn't tell me that at the time. He told me that a year and a half later, once it was a success. But yeah, he had never done this surgery before. He didn't know what he was going to do, because it wasn't quite like a normal navicular break where usually you can put just one pin in it. mine had completely shattered and damaged all the bones around it. So he did an incredible job, to be honest, to be able to put sort of all the bones back together again with these 5 screws and cap it with this plate. Yeah, it was a long process. I had to learn how to walk again. They reshaped my foot. I then started running on like a little trampette, and then eventually got into the swimming pool, then onto the bike, then onto the cross trainer, then back running. But everything has changed. Like the gait, my running gait had changed, the way that even my feeling and everything all through that foot, the flexibility, the mobility, everything was completely different. So it took me a long time to get through all that. But I think because it happened so early in my career, I felt like I was on this big rise up, this big rush. I was like, oh, I've represented GB for the first time. Like, I'm going to go to the Olympic Games. I'm going to do this. This is going to be my new life. And then I had this massive crash very soon after. I think because I was still on that bit of the high, I was so motivated to turn that around and to make sure that I did get back. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to get back to the level I'd been competing at. And actually, I think it helped me in the long run. Like, I came back not only better at the steeplechase, but actually better over all distances then. My flat times were so much improved because I had just been working my nuts off in the swimming pool, on the bike, on the cross trainer, and also just living a bit more like an athlete rather than living like a student. It made a really big difference.
And did it change the way you then trained moving forwards in terms of the intensity of the training that you were doing?
Not so much that first injury. I think we almost made the mistake of trying to get back into a similar pattern of training just because it was my first serious injury. So we got myself back running. 2012, I made the Olympic Games, but I wasn't quite in I mean, I'd had so much time off that even just being at the Olympic Games was a pretty big step forward. 2013, again, I was still making quite good progress. And then 2014, I didn't. I just had quite a lot of illness and sick. I was just unlucky that year. But in 2015, I broke my ankle on the same foot. And really, that was the one that's completely changed the career path of me now, to the point where I went through another surgery, another 2 screws in my ankle. I was in a moon boot, like a cast thing, for about 9 months. And so once I went through that surgery, the pain in my ankle again was really difficult to get back into steeplechase. I couldn't even do a hop, never mind try and do 35 barriers and run at the same time. So at that point, I had to pivot and go towards, right, how am I going to qualify for the next Olympic Games here? Or how am I going to keep being a professional athlete? So we really completely overhauled my training at that point, purely because of the pain. I could not run through it twice a day. So we totally stripped back my training. We had a lot more cross training, a lot more aqua jogging, a lot more biking. And I wasn't really sure how that would go, but I came out my first race of the year in 2016. I set a huge personal best over the 5K. I can't remember what I took. It was like I took 55 seconds or something off my PB and ran a qualifying time for the Olympic Games. And I remember calling my mum that night from America, and she was like, what the hell? Like, how has this happened? You're pretty much running a couple of times a week and everything else is on the cross trainer. She was like, this is just insane. I can't believe you've been able to do this. So from that point onwards, that's when we really made the conscious effort to completely change our training. And just, if it means I need to cross train a little bit more than everyone else, then so be it. And it's been a big change for my mum too, because that's not the type of runner my mum is. You know, my mum would be 130 miles a week, and that's just, it's hard work, and you do it all outside and you run and that's it. But I'm just not, I'm different. Do you know what I mean? I'm a different body, I'm a different person. Like, what works for my mum isn't going to work for me. So it's been quite a big learning curve even for my mum to realise we can't just follow the exact same training plan she did. And yeah, just adapt and change things over the last couple of years. So I think 2015 was certainly, a big turning point then towards the flat distances and moving away from the steeplechase.
And this amazing success that you've had since then, in a kind of recent years, recently, was there a time in all of that injury, especially in 2015, when you thought about just stopping? I mean, there must have been a time when you thought about stopping and giving up. So what do you think it was in you that drove you to come back to put yourself through that?
Yeah, there's been certainly loads of times throughout. I'd say 2011, that serious injury, 2015 as well, where I've been in tears and just thinking, what do I do next? But I don't know what it is. Like, that's always, maybe more so in 2015, because I felt like yeah, I don't know what it is. It's really difficult to explain. There's something inside you that tells you to keep going. Like a little, I don't know if it's a little voice, I don't know what it is, but even though everyone else is sort of like thinking that you're done or saying that, Joanne, this is going to be challenging or this is going to be difficult. Like in 2011, the doctor told me I wouldn't run again at elite level. He said I could hobby jog, like jog about, but like that I wouldn't be able to get back to like running fast. I just remember crying my eyes out, but then deep down something inside me was like, tell me that wouldn't be the case, that I'd get back somehow. So I don't know, I honestly don't know where that comes from. I'm very lucky, obviously I have my mum, my dad, Michael as well. Like, even there'll be times where I'll be upset and I'll speak to my dad on the phone and he'll be like, well, you know, you've been here before. This isn't the first time. You've been through things before. You'll be able to come out the other side. Maybe it's that sort of support as well from their side. I think that definitely helps. It gives me that confidence because they have far more confidence in me than I do, even myself. And so I think that reassurance is part of that too. And ultimately, like, I do this sport because I love it, but at the same time, I want to make them proud I think they're just on as much of this journey as I am. But yeah, there's something just internal and I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why it's there. But yeah, there's always just something telling me that this isn't the end. There's something else to come.
And clearly there was, and that belief of others has kind of really shined through. If I can take you back to that magnificent summer last year and that Commonwealth Games gold. So I wonder, what preparation had it been like in terms of coming into the Games? What had that been like for you?
Again, I had a little bit of disruption heading into the Games. We obviously had the World Championships out in Eugene, and I just don't travel very well at all. Like, long haul flights are just my absolute nemesis. So I knew it was going to be a challenge, but for us, the Worlds is obviously important, just a higher level competition, if you know what I mean. And also all of our funding, all of that UK sport is around World Championships. So that was the first event. We flew all the way to Eugene and I ended up tweaking a bit of my hamstring and doing something to the nerve in my back. And so I didn't really have I just had a nightmare in Eugene. In all honesty, it wasn't even just that. There was injury. I then woke up one day and like couldn't hear out of one ear. All my ear and everything was blocked. Like, it was just a nightmare. I had one thing after another. I was worried I'd then caught COVID because I woke up feeling awful and had all this. And obviously if you tested positive, you had to go into isolation for 2 weeks. So there was a constant stress even around that whole event. And I just remember thinking at the end of Eugene, thinking, God, if I can get myself back into the European time zone where I know that my body operates well and I can just get myself ready for this, because I know I'm in shape. My body's in shape. I knew from training like that the training sessions I'd been doing were far superior than anything we'd ever done before. And so Mike kept saying to me, it's there. It's just you've had like an unlucky series of events with the travel, with illness. I ended up catching laryngitis. I had laryngitis for the second time. And it was just one thing after another. So, but honestly, by the time I got to Commonwealth Games, I was like, I can't believe it. Like, I've got to this start line. I feel good. My body is healthy. I am healthy. There's no viruses, no bugs. Like, I didn't have a single ache and pain. And I thought, I can't believe it. Like, I've got here feeling pretty much 100%. And it's very rare that happens in sport. And so I think I was excited by it as well, knowing that obviously my mum was going to be there, my dad, Michael, like everyone that I loved was going to be in the crowd as well, which is very unusual. But really it was more of like I had a lot of motivation, I think, to turn around what I felt was quite a disappointing run in Eugene, that I didn't want that to happen again. And it really did motivate me for both Commonwealths and even going into Europeans, in all honesty. The Europeans was tough just because Commonwealths was such a high. I didn't prepare for it being such a high moment like that, an emotional moment. It really was way beyond anything I could have ever imagined or dreamed. So Europeans off the back of that was like coming from the top of Mount Everest to trying to like climb your way back up and feel excited again. But Commonwealth was the first race in a long time that I've stood on the start line and just had this buzz, like felt a real buzz and energy and excitement. I was nervous, of course I was nervous, and I could sense my mum was nervous as well, which doesn't happen very often. And so that for me was another thing. I think, again, I feed off other people's energy. I could tell that she was nervous knowing that I'm in shape. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing, she even said to me, there's nothing more I can do now. Like, you are ready to run well. It's just that you have to do it. But yeah, I think mentally that helped me, knowing that as well.
And tell us about that atmosphere in the stadium, especially that final lap. Watching it at home, you could really feel that energy and excitement.
It's nothing like I've ever had before. I just remember even on the start line, everyone was like cheering and going nuts. And for everyone, for all the home nations, even like we had people from England, Northern Ireland, Wales. We even had Isle of Man. There was a couple of athletes in there as well. So every single like home nation athlete was getting such a big roar on the start line that was really exciting to us as well. Like, it does give you a bit of burst of adrenaline. And then when we started running the first couple of laps, I was thinking, God, this is loud. Like, people are cheering loud. And the 10K is a long race, so it's 30 odd minutes. I thought, there's no way this will keep going. I just thought, obviously, it'll quieten down. People will start watching other events and we sort of get forgotten about a little bit. But that just did not happen. Every lap was getting louder and louder and louder. And anytime, obviously I led a lot of the race, but anytime I went back to the front or sort of pushed on the pace a little bit, there was an even bigger roar all the time. It was just beyond any race I've ever had taken part in before. The only thing I can remember being like that was London 2012, watching Greg Rutherford, Mo and Jess that Saturday evening. It was so loud in the stadium, and that's the way, on a slightly smaller scale, but that's the way it felt. Like, it felt like everybody was just going mad. And especially over that last, like when I got into the last 2.5 laps, I remember Michael saying to me, look, if you can stay with them, you've got just as much chance as winning it as anyone else. But the hardest bit is getting to that last sort of K, that last 800 metres. And I remember getting there, and obviously I was tired, but the noise of the crowd was just so loud that I almost forgot how tired I was. I just felt like I was strong. That's the only way I can explain it. And certainly the last 150, it was like something takes over you. I had this buzz going right the way through my fingertips, all the way up my arms. They felt like they were vibrating almost.
Oh, wow.
It was just a really weird experience. I've never ever felt anything like that in my life. And obviously crossing the line and not only coming first, but then seeing the time that we had ran. And then I just heard in the corner of the stadium, I actually heard one of my best friends, Jenny Selman, who had made the team for her first time when we grew up together, like trained together at the Dundee Yokel Harriers. We were in that Kingdom Athletics bus going down to the race. We lived together at university, and then she had made her first Commonwealth Games team at the age of 30. And so it was a big moment for her, but I could just hear her screaming my name. And out of all the people in the stadium, I just heard Jenny's voice. And then I turned and she was standing right next to my mum. And so that's when I ran over to my mum. I gave them hugs. They were crying. And yeah, it was just such a crazy series of events in that one night that I don't think there'll ever be. I know there won't ever be an event like that again for me.
I was going to say that moment that the BBC captured your mum at the end of the race, you and your mum in the race, and we were all in tears in our family. And I know I've been with you a few times at awards this year when people have come up and said exactly the same, but at the emotion that people felt for you. And I think having followed the ups and downs of your journey, that people feel really engaged and invested in you and the success that you had. So are you able to enjoy that as an athlete in that moment? I mean, you mentioned you're almost jumping on a plane to go to the next event. Do you have a time to reflect and recognise what you achieved?
I think that evening, I mean, it'll always be very special to me. Just the fact that obviously I got to see, my mum and Jenny. I ran round, I saw Michael, I then saw my dad and my uncle. Like, I got that special moment with them. But as you said, very quickly, it is on to like the next thing. Like, you're in drug testing for ages. Like, I maybe saw my parents then might have been 1 a.m. in the morning after drug testing, after all the media, to then actually have like a proper conversation and give them a hug and show them my medal. But then you're there for like 15 minutes and then you have to go back to the village. And then for me, it was preparing for the 5K. And both my mum, my dad, Michael, they all said, look, you've had such an incredible moment here, such a big high, such an emotional high. Like, everyone's been crying. There's such an energy. Like, why don't you just relax now and just be happy that you've won that medal? But I think as being an athlete, like, you do click into the next thing very quickly. I think I've seen that in my mum more so than anyone, where I didn't want to fall in the mistake of not appreciating what I've done, because my mum certainly didn't. Like, she's got all these incredible achievements, like world champion and world record holder at some point and Olympic medals. But to her, she never feels like she got her ultimate goal, or she never quite got the big thing. I don't know. She's always looking for something else, and she never really got to take a moment to like be in that moment or appreciate it or celebrate it whatsoever. And so I can see myself similar traits to my mum in that sense of, you're on to the next thing. Like after the Commonwealth, I was straight into Europeans, and then it was into something else, and then it was, but I really over this winter said to my boyfriend, like, I want to make the most of this now and really appreciate that if I get invited to a plush award ceremony that I've never been invited to before, and I've won a sports award that I would never ever have dreamt of being even nominated for, I'm going to go. Whereas my mum would just be like, nope, I'm training, this is it. And I trained around it. It wasn't like I was just sitting on my arse doing nothing. I went to the events, I came home again. It wasn't like I was there partying or anything and on my feet all day, but I just wanted to be there in the moment and at least appreciate that sort of moment in time, because I might never get a chance like that again. So yeah, I've tried, I think, to really take it all in, but I don't probably think it's probably never going to quite sink in to what really, it was just such a build up to that one event and that one race. It really does feel like a bit of a fairy tale, to be honest, the fact that it all came together in that one evening, and even more so with it happening to my mum 30 odd years earlier.
In a way, you've had quite an unconventional approach as an elite athlete. So you've only been coached by your mum, I believe, and you train with your partner, Michael, who's a 3-time Olympian himself. And at the time that you and I first met, actually, you didn't have an agent, which was lovely for me because I was able to talk to you about that commercial deal with Paula and work with you directly. I wonder why you've taken that approach as an athlete.
I suppose it's just, I've always felt like with my mum coaching me that we've always sort of made improvements. I've never really got to a point where I felt like, oh, this is the end of the road. Or a lot of athletes, I suppose, you get to a point where you feel like you've really hit plateau and then it's not, you need to find something else. And there has been times where that's happened, but then we've discussed what changes I want to make. I think my mum's been very, maybe not at first, she's quite difficult, but once you sort of break down those barriers, to then she's a bit more open to making changes within my training. And certainly as I've got older, we're a lot more flexible. Like when I was younger, it was just my mum set the plan and I followed it religiously and that was it. But now it's certainly more of a discussion. It's not so much like my mum coaches me and I just follow it. Like really, to be honest, myself and Michael probably guide a lot of the program now, and it's really getting advice from my mum and a bit of a sounding board from my mum. Will say, look, do you think this still works, or do you think I should change this? But really it's down to us now day to day, because Michael is the one with me 24/7. Like we're together all the time. I think since the pandemic, like I can't think of a time where we've been apart for more than a day or two. Like it is quite unusual. But
you're dressing the same now. I've seen it on social media.
It's actually merging or whatever somebody called it. So yeah, it just seems to work. Like I feel we've got a very small team. I don't have nutritionists and podiatrists and all these sort of scientists on board. It really is just my mum is the one sort of ultimately giving advice, and we're still following those same sessions I've followed from years ago, but we just make changes. We tweak the recoveries, we tweak the sets, we tweak what days we're running them on. It's just not as strict anymore. And then Michael's the one on the ground. I mean, he's pacing me on the bike every day, he's keeping me company all the time. It makes a big difference. In the past, I'd be trying to do it entirely on my own, but with my mum still from afar, and that was really difficult. I think when I look back now, I was just quite unhappy probably and not realising. I'm happy in the sense that I'm obviously doing this job that I love and I'm running every day, but it was very, very lonely spending like 3 to 5 weeks just in a tiny studio apartment on your own all day, no family, no friends, no partner, and you're just running and doing all your training. Like it does become very insular. So it was nice now to be in the sort of opportunity now that we have, that we can travel together. It makes a big difference. I have ultimately my best friend with me every single day. It doesn't feel like I don't miss home as much now, because home is just whenever Michael is with me. So yeah, I think our training has certainly changed a lot over the years. I've just not felt like I need to make any particular changes. As I said, I've gradually, yes, it's been quite a slow progress, but every year I think I've PB'd on something, or there's been maybe reasons why I haven't PB'd, and I've been able to sort of, in my mind, rational why that hasn't really happened. And yeah, maybe it's too slow for other people. Other athletes want these big improvements and everybody wants to become Olympic champion and the world record holder. I don't really think like that either. I'm not, if I end my career and I don't have any Olympic medals, I'll be pretty happy. I've done the best I possibly could within my body. I've done the best I could with my little small team that we've got. And yeah, maybe that's why we haven't felt like we need to make huge changes. I feel very comfortable and happy with the situation that we're in.
Yeah, it's working. You're having that success, aren't you? In terms of social media, you've been very open about your life on social media. Has that been easy to do? And how does it feel to be so in touch with your fans and people that are following you?
Yeah, it still feels very strange that people do follow me in that sense. People are interested and want to know, because I just think it doesn't feel like life's particularly that exciting being an athlete. But at the same time, when I was younger, and not even younger, even when I was growing up, I would have loved to have known, I suppose, what Paula Radcliffe was doing or Kelly Holmes. And obviously I understand I'm not quite their level, but still I would be interested to know what other athletes were doing all the time. So I suppose that's what it is. It's curiosity. People like to see what's happening. And I always said I'd show the highs and the lows, because nothing frustrates me more than when I see someone's Instagram feed and it's all just like a fairy tale, rainbows and unicorns. They only post the good days, Joe, and they only post when they have a great race, or they only post when training's brilliant. But then when they're injured or sick or something, it disappears. And I understand that, to be honest, because I know that a lot of athletes struggle mentally. They just cannot, when they're in those sort of down periods, they don't want to be posting. I get that. I totally get it. Everyone's to their own. But I just think it's important, that for younger people coming through, they see that it isn't all smooth sailing. Do you know what I mean? It is tough. We are humans at the end of the day. We're not robots as well, which is another thing. I think a lot of people just assume that, we should just be able to churn out performances 24/7, no matter if it's our time of the month as women. It's it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? We should just be able to perform at the Olympics and at this World Champs, no matter what date it's on, when it is. So yeah, I think I just want to maybe show a bit of a human element to my social media as well. And I enjoy it. I try my best to speak to people on there as much as I can, because I just think if they're willing to follow and comment and follow my journey, then the least I can do is say hello and write back to people. I enjoy social media. I don't particularly find it a stress. I know some people really do. I think it's a brilliant way to be able to connect to people that, not only the younger generation, but also just people that do the same thing as you. Because ultimately, whether you're doing your first ever park run or whether you're going to the Olympic Games, you're all still putting on your trainers and striving to run your own personal bests. So you all go through the same injuries, the same motivational waves. It's not like other sports. We're quite an unusual sport, I think. And I think somebody that's even an Olympic athlete can completely relate to somebody that runs 10Ks for fun or a park run at the weekend for fun. It is exact same.
And I love the weather. When we see you in all these different weathers and things, I think that's really important too, isn't it? Is the recognising the reality of training in wind and rain and all those things.
Yeah, I mean,
too.
Recently, obviously, we were lucky. We were over in Dubai and it was roasting hot. But again, it's not, people think, oh, it's a bit of a holiday. But when I say, no, it was 35 degrees outside, they're like, oh, okay, that's horrible. So yeah, it's nice and sunny outside and it looks pretty, but they know themselves that even when it gets past 20 degrees in the UK, everybody's struggling. So it's, I try my best. We've been lucky here in Fontenoy. Usually there's snow. We're usually snowed in at this point of the year. But thankfully, although it's been cold, there's been no snow as of yet. So trying to avoid that as much as we can.
And you've become, you mentioned earlier, a champion for body positivity in young women. And I know last year you shared how you were trolled on social media about your body shape and build, especially in a way that would never happen to a man. And you shared some of those comments, which was really kind of upsetting even for us watching, not being on receipt of them, but seeing them. So why is it so important to you to call people out? And what worries you most about that commentary on women's bodies, really?
Yeah, I mean, anytime I sort of call it out, I always get people saying, oh, don't waste your energy and like, don't ignore the trolls, you're just feeding them, blah, blah. And I totally get that. Like, I mean, if I called out every single day that it happens, then yes, that would be a waste of my time and energy. But it's just every now and again, they might catch me on a down day or a bad day, and I just think, nah, I'm not having this today. Like, I just can't be bothered with this ridiculous comment, especially when some of them are, say, like, I don't know, I'm a bad role model for young kids, and that really pisses me off, because for what reason? Like, just because I'm tall and skinny, like, that's ridiculous. Like, I fuel my body, I looked after myself, I've never had an eating disorder, I don't feel like I ever will. Like, that's just not the type of, I've just never had an issue with that at all. It's just not something that's ever remotely crossed my mind. I know athletes sometimes struggle with this connection between food and being light and being fast, but I don't know if it's been so instilled from my mum that I've just never made that at all. Like, for me, it's always been food is fuel, is energy. I need it for all my training. And so I just want to make sure that when, people write these comments, that every now and again I call it out, so that the youngsters do see, one, that I'm sticking up for myself. You don't just lie down and roll over and let all these people just trod all over you. But two, that this is my natural body shape. So I'm not going to have people call me out on something that I cannot change. Like, I remember at high school, again, because I was maybe unconfident just with the way I looked, and I've been so skinny. For the first 3 years of high school, I ate McDonald's every single day for my lunch. I had a large Coke, a burger, and large fries. And this was around about the same time that Super Me documentary was going on about, and then it came out saying how horrendously bad that is for your diet. And all my friends were obviously starting to get a little bit bigger, and I just stayed the exact same. I looked like a beanpole, no matter how much I ate. It wasn't happening. And I ended up getting so many issues with I just felt awful. Like, my heart I was getting palpitations from all the salt. Obviously, I was eating so much salt from McDonald's. My skin was getting bad. I just felt awful. And now when I look back to that, I think it's so stupid trying to put on weight to look like other people, or to try and be something that I just can't be. And so I get a lot of young kids, even young boys, even message me saying that they go to school and they've been taking all these protein powders and supplements to try and get big, to try and look muscular. And it just takes me back to then, really, when I just think, don't do that. Just be you, be proud and be confident of yourself. And I think what's helped me over the last couple of years is realising that this body that I've inherited now has come from my granny, who is incredible. Do you know what I mean? Both my grannies are still alive and still going strong, and there's such incredible role models for me. And then obviously my mum as well. So I just think, well, I've inherited it from those incredible women. I should be proud of this instead of shying away or being scared or trying to change it. So when people sort of call out that now, I just think, nah, I'm not taking it, because I don't need to take that at all. Certainly at my age as well, I don't care what I look like now. This is me, I ain't changing. So yeah, hopefully it sort of gives some of the youngsters a bit of confidence as well to stand up to people. And essentially, at the end of the day, trolls are usually very unhappy in their own life. So there's something usually going on at a bit of a deeper level that you're unaware of. And it usually reflects a very unhappy home, essentially, that they've got. So I feel sorry for them at the end of the day, but it's not going to stop me calling them out every now and again. I just don't have the energy to be doing it every single day.
Absolutely. And I was going to talk to you about commercial partnerships, actually, but maybe not McDonald's after what we've just said. But you've had a few challenges there over the years. And I wonder, can you talk a bit more about what happened with the London Marathon ahead of your injury? So in terms of sponsorship.
Yeah, so I've just signed a couple of months ago a deal with Science and Sport. So it's quite unusual in athletics. This is the first time we've had a bit of a breakthrough with allowing sponsors on kit. Not obviously triathlon for years have had logos all over the clothing, but athletics are now allowed two on their top, one alongside a sports brand and one on the shorts. So yeah, it's been a good move. I think it's important for athletics. It brings a bit more eyes and different brands that maybe wouldn't be thinking of athletics into our sport. But the rules around sort of major marathon events haven't quite caught up to these new sort of regulations that have been brought in by World Athletics. So essentially it just means that the races can decide what the sponsors are so that it doesn't clash with their own sponsors. And so ultimately, I get it. I understand the reasons behind it, but I do think it's wrong. And I think eventually we won't even be having this conversation in all honesty. I think in a year, 2 years time, the rules will just be that you can have your own personal sponsor on your vest and you can race in whatever competition you want. I think it's just the rules are outdated at the moment. The current guidelines, they're just not quite caught up to the new ones that have come into play in the last year or so. I fully understand, obviously it's never going to be a brand that is, I don't know, cigarettes or alcohol or something like that. But I think every athlete should be allowed to have their own personal sponsor because one, it obviously brings in more income for the athlete, but it's also, as I said, a new brand that brings in new eyes that might not have been in that sort of sporting arena before. I know Science of Sport, for example, have done a lot in cycling, but this is really their first step into athletics. They've got a team over in Ethiopia that they're sponsoring now. They sponsor the world champion female from Eugene, who's an Ethiopian athlete as well, and myself. So it's their first little step into running athletics as a sport, which is really exciting. And it's just been a bit more stressful than it needed to be because I do think, in the next couple of years, this clash that has happened won't be an issue.
So is that in all road races? So is it all right on the track in terms of Diamond League and so on, you could wear? I actually think certainly in road races, it's up to the road race organiser to decide on if they allow it or not, whether they feel it's a clash with their own personal sponsors. But I actually think it also clashes, I think the Diamond League and stuff too, I think they can actually approve or not approve sponsors too. But I think they're less strict maybe just because it's, I don't know. I know the sort of major marathons are a lot more strict. Maybe it's more TV time, more coverage, more, I suppose, more money involved essentially as well compared to the track. But I do think, I think that it's the same rule on the track. I think the race organisers can essentially decide what you're allowed and what you're not allowed. I was really interested to read that your mum was dropped by Nike when she became pregnant with you in 1990. And yet less than a year after you were born, she went on to become world champion. So do you think that endorsement and support of female athletes has changed significantly since then, I guess over 30 years?
Yeah, it's changed massively. I think Alison Felix really brought around that change by hiding her pregnancy to avoid being cut. I mean, she was such a huge star in our sport. It just brought, again, so much press and coverage to that being a problem. And ultimately, she's the one that's changed a lot of the sports contracts now. Like, there's pregnancy clauses within sports contracts rather than us being cut. I mean, my mum was cut totally entirely, but I think over the last so many years, it was maybe you got a 50% reduction or 25%. It was almost treated like an injury. If you hadn't competed within those so many months, you had a set fee that would be reduced. But now I know a lot of brands do have pregnancy clauses. I don't know firsthand what those are. I even know my ASICS contract has a pregnancy clause in there. But it is really people like my mum, Alison Felix, people that were real trailblazers of women in sport that have brought around that change. So we're definitely in a better era now. I mean, I saw the other day Nike have some sort of maternity line and sports range, and I mean they've gone probably the other full circle right the way around. But I think that's why I feel quite strongly with ASICS as well. I know that they were the only ones back in the day with my mum where I think they signed her maybe like the week before or a couple of days before her world championships in Japan, and they didn't care about the fact she had me, less than 1 year old, tagging alongside her. I think for me that's important, especially even age in sport as well. A lot of the brands in the past have been very ageist. I got told when I was 27, and I got told I was too old and that I wouldn't be sort of signed again for the next Olympic cycle. And yet I'm 32 and I feel stronger than I've ever had before. I've run faster than I've ever ran before. So I like the fact now that brands are sort of looking at that and going, obviously not all brands, but most brands now are looking at that and not being put off by age. I know ASICS just signed, I mean, if they've got Sarah Hall as an American marathoner. I know they signed a a 42-year-old marathoner over in America. Like, age isn't a number to them. If you're still performing at a high level, you're still willing to put in the work and your body's allowing you to do that, they're going to support the performance and the person rather than, someone's age or whether someone's pregnant and for me, I think that's really important.
Fabulous, isn't it? I guess just finally, you've obviously competed in everything from 5,000 to half marathons, hopefully marathons soon. I'm interested to know what you enjoy most and a bit of what your hopes are for the future.
I actually really enjoy, on track, I enjoy the shorter races. I think because I don't get the chance to do them obviously very often. I mean, 1,500 is so much fun. I absolutely love it. Like, it's essentially me sprinting from as soon as the gun goes to the line. I just sprint as fast as I possibly can, but it's over in 4 minutes or something. So it just feels so bizarre, and I love it. I absolutely love it. If I could be a 1,500 meter runner, I would be a 1,500 meter runner every day of the week. It's just fun. It really is. I used to love the steeplechase, but now I certainly have that fear. Like, I don't miss it at all. I think after breaking my foot on the barrier, like, that for me was, I then used to be dead anxious running, and that's not fun at all when you're running along being anxious every step, thinking that something bad's going to go wrong. So I really do enjoy track racing. Just now I feel so much freer with not having the barriers there. I almost want to make the most of like every opportunity I get on track now because I just really enjoy it. But yeah, more recently, I think for me, the road races have actually been, it surprised me. As a youngster, I never thought I would enjoy like long distance on the roads. Like, that for me felt like completely alien. I just didn't want to be competing over those distances at all. But I feel really comfortable in those events. I feel like I've got a good stride, like nobody's around me clipping me on the track. I'm so tall that my hands even clip their spikes sometimes. When I'm running, I'm clipping people's feet and arms and legs, whereas on the road, like, everyone's got their own space and I can really get into my own stride length and feel comfortable and strong running. So yeah, I'm excited. A lot of people have asked sort of after Commonwealth last year, why move up? Do you know what I mean? Why go to the roads? Why do that? But it's what excites me, and that's ultimately why I keep doing the sport, is finding something that you're passionate about. And I love the half marathon distance. I still think I can go a lot quicker on that. I'd love to try and this year obviously go under 65 minutes, break the European record would be a really, really big goal for me. And then eventually the marathon. I still believe I can run a good marathon. It's going to take a little bit longer time to get there, but I know it's capable. Like, I can see it from training. I can just see from the way that I've built up over the last couple of years, and also just the type of runner I am. I mean, my mum said she's known it for a very, very long time, and I've never quite believed it, but I believe it now myself. And I think that's a big shift in confidence, and that really is the difference. So right now, I'd say road running is definitely something that I'm enjoying. I'm really enjoying the process.
And Paris next year? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's the big goal. I think, again, it was the marathon is what I was hoping to be moving towards. I sort of felt like London would be my stepping stone towards that. I could get a qualifying time in London and then obviously focus back on the track again until Paris Marathon. But we're going to have to reassess our plans a little bit now. I'm going to need a qualifying time. So it's finding another marathon that fits in with the next build-up. We're still deciding sort of what's next. I'll go into obviously track work this season now for the rest of the summer. But yeah, maybe in the autumn, maybe in the winter, maybe even the start of 2024, we try and find a marathon to build up for Paris. But that still feels like plan A to me. Like, I still feel like marathon is the main goal in Paris. But ultimately, if we have to pivot like we have done this year and go back to the 10K, then I take confidence off this year knowing that I've got a sub 30 in me. I do feel like I can run 29 something. So that's like almost plan B. No matter what, for me, Paris is ultimately the main goal.
Thanks to Eilish. I've loved watching her fantastic progress over the years, and I very much look forward to following her through to Paris 2024 and beyond. Head over to fearlesswomen.co.uk to find previous episodes where I've spoken to other incredible track and field athletes, including Jess Ennis-Hill, Donna Fraser, Katrina Johnson-Thompson, Hannah Cockcroft, Denise Lewis and Tanni Gray-Thompson. As well as listening to all the podcasts on the website, you can also find out more about the Women's Sport Collective, a free, inclusive community for all women working in sport. You can sign up for the Fearless Women newsletter, which highlights the developments in global women's sport, and there's more about my book Game On, The Unstoppable Rise of Women's Sport. Thanks again to Sport England for backing the Game Changers through a National Lottery Award, and to Sam Walker at What Goes On Media, who does such a great job as our executive producer. Thank you also to my brilliant colleague at Fearless Women, Kate Hannon. The Game Changers is free to listen to on all podcast platforms. Do follow us or subscribe now so you don't miss out on future episodes. And if you have a moment to leave a rating or review, it would be fantastic, as it really does help us to reach new audiences. Do come and say hello on social media, where you'll find me on LinkedIn, Instagram and Twitter at Sue Anstis. The Game Changers. Fearless Women in Sport.